So, Yuru Camp. I finally got around to finishing this one. So, for some more clarification, I initially dropped this show around episode 7, and there's a very specific reason for that. I had felt like the show was on a downward trend, and then I think it's episode 7, it might be episode 6, where they come across the two campers and the one especially drunk girl. I found that episode just straight up bad, and I was losing interest in the show. So I started episode 8 and wasn't really feeling too engaged, and at that point I decided, it's probably not worth my time. But then, because I've seen so much of it, and I'll admit to a degree it is kinda that I really want to like this show. I love cute girls doing cute things. I love slice of life. This is very much my jam. And then at the revelation, finding out that it's getting a second season and a movie, it's like, I don't want to hate this show. Or at least I want to be on the train, because I kind of felt in a similar situation. I didn't really care for Non Non Biori, and of course that also got like 3 seasons now or something ridiculous. Whereas it seems like all the slice of life shows that I really like never seem to get much continuation. So it was to agree to that, seeing how much people liked it, that made me want to come back to it and give it, a second chance. And so I started up the 8th episode. I found where I had left off and just kept watching and finished it off, and it's good. Yuru Camp doesn't really resonate too strongly with me, and I feel like it does what it does well enough, but I feel like the reason it's sort of gotten so big is in part just due to the strength of it on sort of an aesthetic level. And mainly I mean that on the front of the character designs and the outfits, because that is what is hands down the best part of this show. Like, no argument. Just the character designs and the general design sense, like the outfits the characters are wearing, because they're always wearing, these different sets of clothes that really match up well with their color palette and their personality in a very, new game type of way. It's got that aspect down pat, and yeah, that it is a pleasure to, look at these screenshots of the characters and all that stuff. However, as much as I like that aspect of it, my issues with it never really faded. Because when I dropped it, it wasn't really I dropped it like I straight up didn't like it. It was more that I was losing interest, and I felt like I had other better ways to spend my time. Like, it was one of those shows that was sitting around the 6 out of 10 range, which is, for me, 6 out of 10 is like, I might finish it, I might not. It really depends on just how I'm feeling, whether or not I have the time to spend on it, or whether or not I, am willing to watch something that's not quite as engaging, but is still fairly enjoyable. The show managed to redeem itself a little bit, but not that much, which is the final score of 6.5 out of 10. The big issue with Yuru Camp for me is the background art. I never thought that background art could literally kill a show for me, but this show has proven to me that that is possible. I don't know how many of you listening have watched my Heidi review recommendation video, but in that video I drew a comparison with Yuru Camp, because it had been more fresh in my mind, and I was kind of annoyed that it was getting such a level of universal praise when I felt like there was a lot of issues. And in Heidi, the main character, a core theme of the show, or like a central point, is how much she loves the Alps and the nature around her, and how sort of great that is what it's trying to get across. Like, because she's separated from it, but she wants to get back to it, the show needs to really sell you on that it's a worthwhile endeavor for her wanting to get back to it. Like, it makes sense that she's so infatuated with it. And the show has these jaw-droppingly beautiful backgrounds that are just absolutely stunning and really, really, really impressive and memorable. And they look like art in themselves. And it's one of the things the show, I would say, is probably more well known for, but the way it looks is just, it's something else. It really sells you on it. It makes sense that you're like, yeah, I wish I could be here too, which is why it works. And then you take that, you know, the stunning background art of Heidi, and you go to Yuru Camp, and it's like, it just looks like they traced over photographs. And yeah, that's it. Like, I was watching the show, and certain points I was thinking, like, you know, this kind of reminds me of like those drawings you see on Twitter and stuff of people who go to like who like take a photograph of a location and draw an anime character on top of it. That's what Yuru Camp just is, the whole show. And the thing is, the photography isn't even that flattering. And so on two fronts it just doesn't function, because the characters don't look like they exist in the setting at all. Not even a little bit. It just looks completely unfitting, considering the individual characters have these really distinct, bright color palettes to them all. And then the backgrounds are just kind of bland gray and green, that just looks like photographs of life. And that's not a good thing. It really would have benefited from a more defined aesthetic when it comes to the world around them, because then you could really sell it on the sense of place. Like, a lot of people talk about how, for them, this show sort of captured that feeling of being in the winter and, you know, cuddling by the campfire and all that good stuff. But for me, it completely failed to do that, because I couldn't at all convince myself that these characters were actually within the setting. And if I can't believe the characters themselves are in the setting, how am I supposed to place myself in the setting? For a show that does that actually well, then you would, like, Haruhi or Disappearance, that very much you feel like you're in the world. And even though the background art isn't like impressive or super memorable, it works with the show's aesthetic. Everything feels like it's meant to go together, and like there was some thought put into how they align. So that's really my major issue with Yuru Camp. And then the other issues are more just little side complaints. Like, occasionally I found myself a little disinterested in the character interactions. Sometimes it just felt, you know, a little bit dull. One of my initial big issues, and the reason I dropped it, was because during the first half, it's very heavily setting up this sort of theme of appreciating winter camping. Like, this is what it's doing, is sort of saying, you know, hey, look at how great this is. And it does, hey, look at how great this is, like 3 times. And around that point, I was like, okay, I get it. I get what you're going for, but maybe be a little less forthright with, hey, look at how great this is. I get what you're going for, but it's a little tiresome, and I'm not convinced at all because of the background art, as I clarified earlier. But I don't want to be too negative, because I did give this a positive score. I think overall it is a good show. I would recommend it. I think most people who aren't so picky would probably like it a lot more than I did. The characters are likable. I like the voice acting, especially the glasses girl with the purple hair. She's got sort of like a, I don't even know how to describe her voice. I guess it's kind of like nasally. I like her quite a bit. She's pretty funny. Nadeshiko is cute. Din, of course, is best girl. It's got some nice stuff to it. Like, for instance, Rin, I like that she is just a loner. She's just someone who enjoys being by herself. And the show doesn't present that as a bad thing. It sort of has that this is just how she is, and that's perfectly okay. She has a friend who she talks to, who's supportive of her, you know, solo camping endeavors. Her family's supportive of it. It's not like the show doesn't try and say, look at this outcast. That's bad. Don't be like that. But then it also goes the extra mile in showing that just because you are someone who is generally lonesome or just enjoys being alone, enjoys solace, that doesn't mean that there isn't also a joy to be found in larger social gatherings and, interacting with other people in a meaningful way. And so the show sort of presents the two sides of the coin as she warms up to the group and gets to enjoy being with them, even if she's not quite the most vocal with her emotions. She can sort of find this pleasure that comes with camping with others and sharing an interest with others. But still, she still likes to go camping by herself and be alone. That particularly, I think, is a really strong element of the show, because I feel like a lot of stuff that comments on this type of theme tends to run wholly in one direction or the other. Either it's the loner learning to be in like a social setting and it turns out that they were actually so lonely and sad all along and that wasn't the proper way to live, or it's a complete like nihilist type of, this is a little less common, but like a more nihilist type of viewpoint where it's like social interactions are all shallow and meaningless, which usually that type of theme is established, and then they'd go the opposite way and try and prove that there is meaningful social interaction. But either way, it usually is trying to show that one side isn't the best, isn't good, and very rarely do you see a show that presents the two sort of lifestyles as not mutually exclusive. That's good. I like that. Din is nice. And generally the show has a pretty good sense of humor to it. And it's just a solid, enjoyable show. The soundtrack is quite strong and one of the stronger elements of the show for sure, next to the design sense. The soundtrack just presents a lot of really nice tunes to it, I guess. And it's got a good instrumentation to it. It's a little hard to put into words exactly what about the soundtrack makes it work, at least off the top of my head. But it just sort of sells the lighthearted fun of it pretty well. So I guess that's my overall thoughts on Yuru Camp. I like it. It has potential, which is why I'm hoping to see, some improvement with, as it progresses with the later seasons in the film that's coming. My hope is that they pick up the visuals, especially in the series. You could tell the animation quality steadily went down, because the first episode I thought was just straight up really well animated, like really beautiful from a character animation perspective, and it felt like as the show continued the animation quality kind of went down. There was a lot less like dynamic poses, there were quite a few just kind of janky looking cuts of animation, stuff in that vein. So my hope is that maybe refine the aesthetic a bit with the background art, some improved character animation, maybe explore more of the themes that I liked. And because everyone's sort of like into camping now, I'm hoping that they don't really have to spend so much time trying to convince us that winter camping is cool, at least not in such an overt manner as they did initially. So yeah, that's my rambling review of Yuru Camp.